Indelible Ann, the larger-than-life story of Governor Ann Richards. In a tiny wooden farmhouse outside a lonely Texas prairie town, a brand new mother paused. Weary from labor pains that felt like barbed wire and anchor chains, she wrung a chicken's neck from her birthing bed. After all, dinner needed fixing, and that was a woman's work to do. That morning, the universe had opened wide and borne forth a humble heroine, fit for a tall tale. She was a baby, all right, but just wait. You'll see. Dorothy Ann Willis grew up tending chickens in gardens, running down dusty roads until her feet could stand the hot summer heat, and climbing chinaberry trees. She learned early on how to bait a trot line by the river at dark. She would pedal 5 miles each way on her bicycle for piano lessons, and by the time Dorothy Ann was in first grade, she performed poems and stories for a packed schoolhouse. That small-town girl had found her voice and the guts to use it. You can do anything you'd like in this world, Daddy told her. You'll just have to work at it, Mama insisted. Dorothy Ann wasn't afraid of work. She might have been a bird-legged girl, all right, but just wait. You'll see. The war came to the Willis house, when Daddy shipped off to California. Mama and Dorothy Ann managed just fine on their own. But Dorothy woke up one morning to find that Mama had wrung the neck of every last chicken in the flock. Dorothy Ann helped can the meat, and together they loaded the car to bursting. Daddy was a long way off, but the Willis women were determined to catch up. San Diego pulsed with life and pushed Dorothy Ann's lens of the world out wide. A streetcar ride over the Balboa Park carried her to junior high, where Dorothy Ann's classmates had names and cultures from faraway places. They may have had different backgrounds, all right, but it didn't take long to see just how much they had in common. When First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt made a surprise visit to the Naval Hospital in town, she raised a high ruckus by refusing to stop for a reporter's photograph. She couldn't stand the injustice of leaving enlisted Black servicemen out of the frame. Eleanor's boldness excited Dorothy Ann, whose heart had changed forever in California. She might have been a young girl, all right, but just wait. You'll see. War's end took her family back to Waco, Texas, and the start of high school brought a rising tide deep inside Dorothy Ann. Desperate for a new beginning, she dropped her first name and became Ann. Ann staked her claim as a speech and debate team marvel. Soon enough, she was on her way to the Capitol for Girls State, a program for young women to learn about government. Ann's experience was more than a lesson in parliamentary procedure. With her outgoing personality, she befriended girls from the citrusy sweet Rio Grande Valley and the windswept plains of the North Texas Panhandle. The program's director saw the spark of Ann's passion and talent igniting and put her on a train to Washington, D.C. to represent Texas and Girls Nation. Young delegates hailing from gleaming cities and faraway towns across America learned the business of Congress and the importance of civic duty. Their time together ended in the Rose Garden under the pop-crackling light bulbs with the presidential handshake. Never mind all she had accomplished and learned on her cross-country trip. Back home in Waco, Texas, News of Anne's friendship with a black delegate was all anyone could talk about. While Anne's travel raised chatter and arched eyebrows all over town, one founding member of the Waco League of Women Voters saw potential in the girl's independent spirit. What in the world would it take for her son David to be interested in an audacious young woman like that? Anne might have been a starry-eyed teenager, all right, but just wait, you'll see. When they finally met, David and Anne were inseparable. They inspired each other, challenged each other, made each other laugh. With college graduation soon behind them, Anne and David married and filled their house with political activists and 4 children. Many years at the University of Motherhood taught Anne stamina for never-ending workdays, grit in advocating for her children, and coordination to juggle it all. It wasn't long before Anne's patience for answering phones and sending mailers as a political volunteer ran bone dry. There were people to meet and problems that needed fixing. Anne knew this was a woman's work too. She might have been a perfect housewife. She might not have been a perfect housewife, all right, but just wait. You'll see. Anne stood up and raised for her helping hand high. Though women hadn't often been trusted with the kind of responsibility that came with public office, Anne convinced voters that time was right for change. She earned her place as county commissioner and built a bridge between the predictable past and the limitless future. But even earthshakers like Anne needed help now and again. The life she'd taken such care of to create began to crumble, and Anne's marriage could not survive the strain. Family and friends held Anne up until she regained her footing, her strength, and that winding voice. Anne was elected to state treasurer and hardly had time to be surprised. The treasury was bogged down with scandal. She set to hiring a hardworking staff that reflected the folks around her. If children could see people who looked like their parents working at the Capitol, Anne thought they could imagine their own future there too. Anne's team digitized the treasury. Instead of having to wait for paper checks by mail, people could get payments by computer faster than a prairie fire with a tailwind. Every second saved kept money in the pocket of Texans, toiling to make ends meet. Anne's star had risen high, all right. But just wait, you'll see. One sweltering summer night in Atlanta, Georgia, the lights went down on a roaring national convention. The hall stilled, and then those lights came back up. A high, cotton-haired Anne Richard dazzled the crowd with delighted television viewers everywhere. Her one-liners zinged. Her southern drawl zanged. Just as soon as Anne finished making everyone laugh till they cried, folks asked why Anne wasn't running for president. Because there was still work to be done in Texas. Anne stood up and raised her helping hand high again, this time to run for governor. It was an uphill campaign, spattered with muddy attacks and stinging insults. A whole mess of Texans thought Anne was out of her league and destined for defeat. But Anne, she couldn't be stopped. She kept on visiting all those little towns. She steered a boat through coastal waterways. She listened to the people, colorful patchwork of Texans sewn tightly together by their desire for change. And when they elected her the 45th governor of Texas, they joined hands, marched up Congress Avenue, and took back the Capitol for the people, just like Anne had promised. Governor Richards believed in doing the right thing no matter what, taking care of all people and working together. Anne spoke up for those whose voices had been long ignored, made laws to protect the land, and empowered teachers in every corner of the Lone Star State. She whipped words into speeches that inspired teamwork and brought along those standing in the way. A new day had come with Anne's rise. Anne's governorship ended in a re-election loss, but her work kept right on going. There were changes to make, people to empower, wrongs to right, and that was a woman's work too. With all of Anne's words delivered and her life complete, many wondered, will we ever see such greatness again? After all, Anne was her own tall tale, larger than life, nearly unbelievable, but oh my, undeniably indelible. Just wait. You'll see. And so in the back, I'll have the book up on the board. You can read more and see pictures from her childhood and learn more about her. So turn and talk with your neighbor. What genre do you think this should go in? And why?